This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing, Rob? How's it going over there? Good? Oh, look at Rob dancing behind the glass. Oh. Why don't you come in here and dance with me, big boy? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, back with another full slate of interesting, amazing, and sometimes unbelievable stories by authors who found a way, some way, to put their stories together and get them on the market with the help of Page Publishing. We begin with Laura Jakey, a kindergarten teacher who reads a lot of children's books. So she decided it was time to write a few of her own. And this one is called Octopus on Vacation. So how was this octopus born?
I started out by doing the first book called Octopus on the Loose. And that book was actually inspired because every summer before school starts, I get these back-to-school dreams, whether my classroom will be ready. So I had a dream last summer about having a classroom pet, an octopus. And when I woke up that following morning, I thought, hey, I could turn that whole dream I had into a writing story. And I had so much fun with the main characters in that book, Caleb Tufford, the little boy that's in kindergarten, and his octopus class pet, Lewis, that I thought I could turn this into a series. So I thought, well, how much fun would it be to take an octopus on vacation with you? So they do different things such as surfing or snorkeling or zip lining on a tropical island. I have some ideas for the next adventures those two characters will go on.
All right. Why an octopus?
Just because it's something different. I thought, why can't an octopus do all of these fun things? I read so many children's books all day long in my classroom, and I've never really come across an octopus as a main character. And I thought, they're kind of creepy, but let's turn it into a cute, funny, silly one.
Is this required reading in your kindergarten classroom?
It's not required, but I've shared with my students the writing process that I went through during our writer's workshop time, and we talk about the author and the dedication page and how we have to revise and edit our writing and make sure our illustrations match our words. So it's actually been a great mentor text, a teaching point for me to use with my classroom, which has been a blessing because now I see my students inspired and wanting to do their own fictional stories and use their imaginations and know that it's okay to be silly with their writing also.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Exactly, yes.
Is this how you have sold your book, through your kids?
I have a great support staff with my colleagues here at school, but I also have a lot of connections in other schools. And just because of the age group, teachers are always looking for new books. So with the connections I have with other teachers in my building as well as in other buildings, it's been kind of like, oh, wow, we have an author that we know. Let's use her book and promote it and bring her writing into our classrooms. And the families I either have currently or I've taught in the past have also been incredibly supportive, and they send me pictures of their own children reading my book at home. So it's been really, really exciting to see that I'm touching other kids, too, which is great.
What's your advice for aspiring authors who are listening right now?
I think the most important thing is to go ahead and take a chance. This has always been on my bucket list. Something I've always wanted to do is to write stories for children, but I never thought that it would happen. So last summer when I had that dream and I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and write it down. Let's take a chance, see what happens, and kind of go from there. And I was blown away to see this whole process fall into place and to know that, hey, I put something down, it's working, we can revise, we can make it better. And now all of a sudden I have other ideas to continue this. So I think the most important thing is for people to take a chance and just to know that it's okay. You might not make everybody happy. You might not impress everybody, but it still is something for you to be proud of, to take some pride in.
Take a chance. I got it. Take a chance, Rob. That's always a good idea. Susan Bradbury wrote a science fiction story about a clash of cultures, one primitive planet, one advanced. And it came to her in a very interesting way.
That's right. And there's something very special about the primitive planet that the advanced culture has been aware of over generations. And The story is about a family on the planet that have become part of the Advanced Planet's genetic program to enhance extrasensory perceptions. The Advanced Planet knows about it, but the primitives do not, although some of them suspect something might be going on. But it starts off with a teenage boy, and his family's wealthy, and he's in training to be a warrior, and he has two mentors that help him. They're like his teachers and trainers, and they happen to be operatives from the Advanced Planet that are working with him and his family. So clashes between the two cultures is kind of cool.
Where did you come up with this?
Oh my gosh, it just popped into my head. I did a lot of technical writing for the healthcare industry. Pretty boring, pretty dry. And my boss wanted me to write an article to publish. So I did that, but I always joked around with him about whether he wanted the fiction or the nonfiction versions. So, of course, after I published that article, I had to write the fiction version. So I wrote it into a science fiction story that was funny and shared it with my colleagues, and they liked it, and that was the start of it.
So you were just joking around, basically.
You bet.
Oh.
And they thought it was funny, and something just happened, and I just found this well of creativity inside, and it just hasn't stopped. That was in April of 2014, and I started writing this book and finished it probably in 3 months. You know, every spare moment that I had went into writing. Getting it published was another matter.
Yeah, right? How'd that go for you?
Well, eventually, once I found Page Publishing, it went very well. They helped me through every step. Before that, though, I have my son, who's a good writer, and my oldest brother, who's a retired college professor, do some heavy-duty editing. And once I presented the manuscript to Page, there wasn't a whole lot of changes. But the process is just like any new process that you learn. Certainly not as complicated as my previous job, that's for sure, because I worked at a hospital as an infection preventionist. So that was, complicated to the max. But publishing is fascinating. I mean, there's plenty of room for learning, that's for sure.
Now, this book, is it part of a series?
Yes, it is. It's the first in a trilogy that involves the song universe. And what I did was I went to the local country journal here in the Berkshires, and I met with the editor, and she interviewed me. So I got my picture of me in my book and a really good description of what was going on and what I was doing. And I contacted local libraries, dropping off books. And, of course, all my friends and everybody got a book. So now I'm going to start pursuing either readings or book signings. It's fun. I'm meeting some interesting people. The editor of the Country Journal was wonderful.
Great.
And a science fiction fan, no less.
Oh, good. Good.
A lot of people read science fiction. It's funny. So
you're on your way, Susan Bradbury.
I hope so.
All right, Susan Bradbury. Great name, by the way, for a writer. Stephen Cribb enjoyed a long career as a cop in Florida, and he has so many stories to share in his book entitled The Emotions from a Badge, Tales of a Deputy Sheriff. Stephen.
When I talk about the emotions of the badge, my book talks about going through the most comical and laughing stories to some of the most horrible stories. And one of my most horrible stories was probably one of the worst mass murders in Hillsborough County, where a suspect went into a grocery store and threw gasoline on the cashier and some other ladies there that were shopping for the 4th of July weekend and set them on fire. If you've ever dealt with a burn injury, the pain from that injury. And one died immediately, and the others died every so often for the next 28 days before the last one passed. And it was probably one of the most horrible ways to watch people die that I ever dealt with in my 10 years as a homicide detective. The emotions that a law enforcement officer goes through, from some of the most comical things you've ever seen to some of the most tragic. And, every day you're riding the roller coaster through the struggles of life by the police officer being the guardian over those struggles. I have one story of a young man who's in the police academy who ends up being the cousin of my wife that I married later on. He's telling me this very bad story about an investigator who was standing over a deceased person, and the phone rang, and the detective told the dead guy not to get up and he'd get the phone. And the family members were in the background. He didn't know that, which caused quite a stir. And the cousin was telling me, "Can you believe anybody could do that?" I said, "Well, yeah, that was me." So it was one of those moments. But,
Yeah.
but my whole concept of the book, the way I dealt with it was kind of the idea of, let's get a cup of coffee and sit out on the back porch and I'll tell you some stories about my career. I think it would be a good book for all types of people. Like I say, the people I've talked to, read it so far, say they feel like they're, sitting around having a chat with me about all the extremes of being a cop. And, that's what I wanted it to be. I'm actually more interested in the opinions of non-law enforcement people to see if I've communicated with them more than another cop. When my book was first published, I told my friends from the sheriff's office that as long as my book did well, I wouldn't publish a second book about all the bad stories I know about them. So some of them might need to buy more than one copy, maybe 1,000 copies.
All right, Stephen, way to go. That's one way to sell a book. What can I tell you? Here's a title that'll get your attention: Cancer, 3 Days to Live. But Richard Bennett is here to tell us that's not the way this story plays out. Richard.
Well, Dad had started coughing, getting shortness of breath, and eventually, as a typical guy, he waited, and then he finally went in and really didn't come up with much, and then went to another doctor, and then that's when they found out that he had lung cancer. And that was in 1998. And then I got a call, and they said to come pick him up. You got to come get him. There's nothing else we can do. And so I get down there, talk to the doctor. He says, take your dad home, make him comfortable. You may have three days. It's hard to tell. So we got Dad home. Of course, all of us are in shock. The next few days were nightmares. And then he started coming around. He was a really outgoing, positive thinking, drive it to the ground type of guy. And he just said, this is it. He goes, I am not letting this win. His faith was strong. His family efforts were strong. They started the holistic medicines, the modern medicines, using them together. He changed everything. And I think he fought strong for 4 years. And then after that, everything I think around that time was, they noted was gone. So altogether, he had 12 years from the 1998 till April 12th when he died. So that was an additional time that, a lot of people may not get. But, the faith, the family, and changing the way of life of eating and the herbs, and he got real heavy into that stuff. It's crazy how well he did.
Who did the research? Who?
Colleen, his partner that he was with for 30 years. She was by his side, and
They used traditional remedies with homeopathic remedies.
Oh, huge. Yeah. He did everything that he was supposed to do. And with the exercising, and he got sick for a while, but he stayed with it, and he believed, and he talked, and the family was always visiting him. But, yeah, let's see, he worked with me, which was, I cherish that time, till my dying day, that I got to work with my father side by side for 2 years in a pawn shop that I had. We had a great time. His grandson was always around him. I mean, I think that's what drove him for so many years of trying to stay healthy.
Is it the message of faith, never to give up?
Yes. Sometimes I think they get really callous on people's feelings and emotions, and just take him home. He doesn't have much longer to live. Well, nobody really knows that. And there's proof. That's 12 years after they told me I had 3 days. So we learned to cherish every day that went by. And, we ended up getting 12 years after he was first diagnosed. So the biggest thing is never to give up hope. Your faith, your family, and just changing your way of life of eating and taking care of yourself is huge. And he believed it. And he got us another 12 years.
What a story, Richard. Not only did his dad live 12 years beyond those 3 days, but during that time, he visited hospice patients and lifted their spirits. By the way, I should tell you that Richard's dad actually wrote this book, and his son, Richard, just hooked up with Paige to get it printed. All right, with that, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, embracing today, not knowing what tomorrow will bring, the importance of collective institutions, and a story of deceit, love, disgrace, and rejection, all coming up right after these words.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Have you ever had your life change on a dime, like in a second, out of nowhere? Life as you knew it changed forever? Well, that's exactly what Amanda Mooney is talking about in her book entitled...
The book is called A Few Short Seconds and Other Stories, and there's that key phrase there, a few short seconds. And it not only is a reference to the first story in the book, which is called A Few Short Seconds, but really, like, the common theme of each story is how quickly things can change and just how unprepared we often are for those things to change. I mean, like, each story is different. Each story has, like, different content and deals with different things. But that's really the common theme that ties them all together, is just how much of our lives, it's all just fleeting. And at any moment, at any time, things can change.
We all too often forget that, and we take it, all for granted.
Right, exactly.
Did something in particular happen to you that...
I think it was an amalgamation of things, honestly. Like, I think the catalyst for this was I had lost my granny about 8 years ago, and I was really, really, really close to her and everything. That is really what started it. And actually, in this book, the story Geraldine is actually kind of like a memorial piece to her. So, like, she's in this book and everything. And then the thing that really, like, sealed the deal for this is my girlfriend of about 2 months had become, like, really close to and, like, thought that I, like, had, like, a future with and everything. I mean, even though it was, like, only after 2 months, like, we started, like, being, like, super close and everything. And then I was thinking that everything was okay, and then all of a sudden she just breaks up with me out of nowhere. So what sealed the deal, I was like, everything can change, like, in just a few short seconds. It, like, started with my granny, and then that's what sealed the deal, pretty much. So.
And ended with a relationship.
And it ended with a relationship. And then writing this book, like, with that theme, I guess, like, it seems like I was kind of dwelling on it, but it really was very therapeutic, because I was getting, like, this whole obsession with time, and this obsession with time being so fleeting, and I was getting all those feelings out onto paper and, like, putting them someplace else other than having them remain inside of me. So, like, writing this book was really very therapeutic. So
a lot of people say that, Amanda. That's why a lot of people write. Yeah, because we have stuff we can't get off our chest. I mean, it sounds like this book is a wake-up call. You're saying to other people, geez, don't do what I did.
Exactly.
Did you ever feel like you took things for granted?
A lot of times, really, honestly. Like, I hope they just glean from that, like, to really be mindful of, the fickle nature of time.
All right, Amanda. You know what? It's why we need to embrace today. You just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Next up, Samuel Inangero has a PhD in economics He's an academic, a researcher, a lecturer. He's written extensively about the role cultural factors play in the economic success or lack of it in countries like sub-Saharan Africa. He talks to us tonight about his latest book entitled Collective Institutions in Industrialized Nations.
Yes, it's about institutions that make nations great. Nations are comprised of several institutions, but there are important ones like market institutions. So another good institution that is common among developed nations is collective institutions. The collective institution is whereby people recognize interdependency. People are interdependent. Therefore, whether they are operating in a capitalist country, free market country, or communist country, collectivism is common among these developed nations. In Japan, in Europe, in the US, in Canada, in Russia, you can find a strong collective institution among the people. But this institution is missing in Africa. It's not present. And that's what is holding them behind the rest of the world.
Okay, so when you talk about fundamental institutions or core values, I'm just reading from your blurb here that originate from beliefs, and all of the things that you talk about here, they're not present in Africa, is what you're saying.
They're not. They are so detached from each other. Economically, they are secluded from each other. Everyone is secluded from other people. I wrote it just to Africa to make some adjustment to their social structure. So if they wish to catch up with the rest of the world, they have to make some adjustment to how they look at themselves, how they see the rest of the world, how they relate to each other. So for them to have a developed economy, there has to be collective institutions because that's what is common among developed nations, collectivism.
But you're saying emerging nations of Africa do not have these things.
They have them, but they don't function properly because of lack of collectivism. Because for people to be able to work and save, they got to be employed. And for employers to be employed, they got to produce for other people to buy. And people cannot buy because they don't have any income. So it goes around. Therefore, for instance, in the pre-industrial Europe, the elites are concerned about the welfare of the commoners, of the wage earners, because the higher the wages of the commoners, the more goods they're going to buy from the political elites. So their concern then was how do we remove these people from subsistence living? That's what they're concerned. So that's another collectivism, whereby the airlines are concerned about the income of the poor. Even in the days of Plato, Plato lived by 500 or 400 BC. Europeans were concerned about the income of the poor and how to distribute income to the poor. That's the kind of collectivism.
A complicated and difficult situation, Dr. Anagero, and an issue I can't begin to fathom how to solve, but certainly it starts with the kind of research that you present in this book. So thank you for that. Finally, a story that is stranger than truth, a story that would outdo the most outrageous reality show you could possibly think of. Our next author, Glenn Porter, tells us the true story of the Porter brother tragedy, the untold story. Glenn.
Me and my brother met some people back in 1986 when we worked for them, and they had two beautiful daughters, and me and my brother wanted to marry these two girls, but it didn't work out. We quit their family's business, and they decided they wasn't going to let us get away that easy, so, they decided to put us out of work. They was super rich. They blacklisted us statewide and put us out of work, and over the years went by, things turned a lot worse, to the point where they are now.
What did you do for them? What kind of work?
I was a building maintenance man. My brother was a laundry person. He worked night.
You did maintenance and he did laundry?
Yes.
And you worked for this rich family in Maine.
Yes.
And you both fell in love with sisters.
Yeah. Really beautiful. Beautiful blondes, blue eyes.
And you were going to marry them and then decided not to? You both decided not to?
The father, he didn't want me to marry his daughter because I wasn't Catholic. He caused a lot of trouble, and I got sick of him harassing me. And he had a girlfriend. He was a married man, but he had a girlfriend on the side, and, she treated me something terrible on the job. She wanted me to quit. And she wanted him to leave his wife and marry her, but that weren't ever going to happen. But she didn't come from money, so he would stick with his wife. But I quit, and later on, my brother quit.
What kind of business did they do?
It was a boarding home.
It was a boarding home?
2 big boarding homes for old people. Or anybody, anybody wanted to live there, pay the fee. We moved back in with our parents, and our parents got bought out by the Marchands. Those are the rich people. And they told my father if he ever tells his sons that he even talked to them, he's going to put him out to work for the rest of his life. That's pretty serious, My parents hated them instantly, the Marchands, after they talked to them that way. So we had to live with our parents for 10 years, me and my brother, because we was put out to work. We had no choice. And my parents tortured us daily by smart-mouthing us. You'll never have them girls. And one of the jobs my parents were supposed to do was call the Marchands up, tell them every job we're looking for. In return, the Marchands give my parents $200 a month to spy on us and tell them what we're doing. It's a pretty terrible situation.
That's crazy.
So we need to buy some good land to hunt, and we have houses built, and in general, it's get a life.
All right, so you're hoping to sell this book and make money and have a great life.
Yeah, people in Maine, I'm not in no hurry for them to find out about it any sooner than they have to, because the Marchands might try to sue me for slander, even though I changed all their names and everything in the book. But there's always that chance they might try to sue me for slander. So I've only told 5 people in this state about the book.
Is their real name Marchand?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Too crazy, too scary, Glenn. Be careful out there. Did I tell you this was great reality show material, Rob? I'm telling you. Woo. Anyway, I think that is about all the time we have for tonight. Mr. Clock says it's time to go. Thank you so much for stopping by, hanging out. And by the way, if you have any comments or questions about the show, feel free to send them in to Lisa at pagepublishing.com. Lisa, pagepublishing.com. Maybe I can read some of that feedback right here, huh? What do you think about that? That would be fun. We will be back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Same time, same place, 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.